The jungle went silent. Akiko sensed something wrong. No drums, no warnings, just ghosts. Now imagine this, the legendary Dahomey Amazons versus a modern U.S. Army Ranger fire team. Blades against bullets, history against the future. Who survives?
This was a hunt.
The year is complicated. For Lieutenant Clara Ramirez, the relentless humidity felt timeless. Her quadriceps burned from the 20-mile ruck that morning, a warm-up for a mission that was anything but routine. Her 4-person Ranger fire team, a lean, lethal spearhead of the 75th Ranger Regiment, had been inserted deep into hostile territory. Their objective, a suspected hostile staging point. But intelligence had been thin. Ghost Village, her brief had read. High indigenous activity. Target, confirm presence, extract intel, avoid direct engagement. Easy to say from an air-conditioned ops room.
Ramirez checked her M4 carbine, its suppressed muzzle a silent promise in the humid night. Beside her, Specialist Anya Miller, her comms and recon expert, adjusted the NVGs strapped to her helmet, the world transforming into shades of emerald and gray. "Movement up ahead, Lieutenant," Miller whispered, her voice a ghost in the comms. 2 patrols. Irregular formations. No visible weapon signatures, but big blades. This was the domain of the Amazons, the Mino, or Our Mothers, as they were called by their own. For decades, under King Gezo, they had been the iron fist of the Dahomey Kingdom, a force swelling to over 6,000 warriors by the 1840s. Some were captured women, others volunteers, often wives who had reported their husbands for petty crimes, earning themselves a new, brutal life of purpose. Their training was a 3-year crucible of physical endurance, blade work, and musketry. They ran with astonishing speed, climbed thorn fences in silence, and learned to kill with brutal efficiency. Their reputation preceded them. Tales of public executions and ritual scarification sent shivers down the spines of their enemies. They fought the French with ferocious courage in the 1890s, killing over 100 well-armed colonial soldiers in pitched battles, often dying with a smile, earning them a fearsome legend. Their doctrine was shock and awe, overwhelming enemies with close-quarters ferocity. Their weapons were simple: single-shot muskets, war clubs, and the dreaded 2-foot machete, razor-sharp and wielded with terrifying skill. For these warriors, the jungle was home, every vine a tripwire, every shadow a hiding place. They had no need for satellite uplinks or thermal imaging. Their senses, honed over generations, were their sensors. Their limitations were obvious: a musket's reload time, the range of a throwing spear. But their spirit, their absolute commitment to the kill, was limitless.
For Ramirez and her team, the modern Ranger, the challenges were different. They represented the elite 3% of women who had endured the crucible of Ranger School. 61 days of sleep deprivation, forced marches carrying 80-pound rucksacks for 20 miles, and brutal combat simulations. They were masters of small team infiltration, precision strikes, and leveraging technology. No air support, limited satellite communication, just 4 women, 2,000 rounds of ammunition across their team, 4 grenades, breaching charges, and the absolute certainty that they were the most dangerous things in this jungle. The mission was surveillance. The assumption was simple: any contact would be with lightly armed local insurgents. They had just walked into something far, far older. "Contact, Lieutenant. 10 o'clock, 50 meters, Miller hissed, her NVGs picking out the faint heat signatures of bodies moving with unnatural silence through the undergrowth. Looks like 2 patrols, irregular formations, no visible weapon signatures, but big blades. Akiko, still as a stone, watched the 2 strange figures. Their movements were fluid, disciplined, but the way they held their long, dark sticks felt wrong. Not a musket, not a spear, and their eyes, glowing faintly in the gloom, were chilling. She nodded to Zahara, a young, eager warrior whose scars were still fresh. "Report, Scout. What do they carry?"
Zahara melted away, moving with the practiced stealth that Amazons use to raid enemy villages. She would observe, gather information, and then strike. This was their way. Get close, use the element of surprise. Then, the overwhelming charge. Ramirez made a snap decision. "Miller, prep smoke. Rodriguez, cover our 6. I'm moving to acquire a better observation point. We need to know who we're dealing with before we react." The Rangers, with their subdued uniforms designed to blend into any environment, moved like specters, each step precise, each breath controlled. They had been trained for this: adaptation, improvisation, survival. Suddenly, a piercing shriek ripped through the night, followed by the distinctive crack of a musket. Zahara had engaged. From her position, Ramirez saw a flash of movement, a dark figure lunging with a machete. Before she could process it, the musket cracked again, a wild shot, missing badly. The Amazons had seen her team, and their primitive firearms, while inaccurate, were enough to signal their presence.
"They're faster than we anticipated," Miller grunted, deploying a smoke grenade with a soft thump. Thick white plumes began to billow, covering their retreat. "And they're closing fast. Contact 13 o'clock, multiple targets." Akiko snarled, her blood singing. "Charge for Dahomey!" The jungle erupted with war cries, a terrifying chorus of female voices. The air filled with the thud of bare feet on earth, the rustle of leaves, and the glint of steel. Her warriors, a wave of disciplined ferocity, surged forward, muskets barking. They were overwhelming the enemy scout. Zahara's eagerness had turned into a full frontal assault, and she was pressing hard. Ramirez watched the IR signatures on Miller's scope. The numbers were alarming. Not just a patrol, a small army. "Miller, fall back. We're being flanked. Rodriguez, suppression fire on that 10 o'clock flank."
The M4s opened fire, a controlled burst of 3 rounds per target. The suppressed cracks were sharp, precise, and utterly alien to the Amazons. Akiko watched in horror as 2 of her warriors stumbled, then fell, without a sound, without a visible enemy. Zahara, just feet from the scout, froze as the scout dissolved into smoke. Then the musket in her hand was ripped away by an unseen force. A sharp stinging pain erupted in her shoulder. She was down. "Unseen demons!" Akiko bellowed, her courage warring with the incomprehensible reality. She rallied her remaining warriors, pushing them harder. Their numerical advantage was immense, but the enemy's invisible strikes were devastating. They were conditioned to pain, to death, but not to this ghost-like precision. As the smoke cleared, the Rangers vanished. Ramirez had executed a classic peel-back, leapfrogging her team through the jungle, using the M4's superior range and accuracy to inflict damage while evading contact. "Miller, set up the quadcopter. Give me eyes on their approach. Rodriguez, switch to non-lethal if they get too close. We're not here to massacre them, just to break contact and gather intel."
The tiny drone, barely audible, lifted into the canopy. Miller's tablet lit up, showing an infrared view of the Amazon force, a wave of heat signatures moving in a sweeping search pattern. "Lieutenant, they're disciplined, moving in formation. Estimate, 50, maybe 60 warriors, minimum, and they're angry." Akiko, clutching her axe, her face a mask of furious determination, followed the path of her fallen warriors. 2 dead, a 3rd wounded and disarmed, all without seeing the enemy. She tasted blood, her own, from a bite to her lip. These strangers were unlike any foe she had encountered. Not French, not rival tribes. Something darker, more ethereal. This was no ordinary battle. This was a hunt, and she would not be the hunted. The clash escalated into a deadly game of cat and mouse. For the next hour, the Ranger team used their technological superiority to devastating effect. The drone provided real-time overwatch, highlighting every Amazon flank, hidden ambush point. Ramirez directed her team, weaving through the jungle, engaging only when necessary, making every bullet count. The M4's rate of fire, accuracy, and magazine depth, 30 rounds per magazine, versus the musket's single shot and agonizing reload, was a game changer. Night vision goggles transformed the dense jungle into a tactical playground for the Rangers, while the Amazons fought blind, relying on instinct and the faint light filtering through the canopy.
But the Amazons were relentless. Their sheer numbers, their intimate knowledge of the terrain, and their absolute fearlessness began to tell. They used the jungle itself as a weapon, setting simple but effective traps, creating diversions, trying to drive the Rangers into choke points. Twice, the Rangers were forced to abandon positions just moments before a wave of machete-wielding warriors crashed through, seeking close-quarters combat. Ramirez's ammo count was dropping. 4 M4 magazines were gone, 2 grenades used for diversion. Miller's drone, caught in a desperate Amazon trap, had been swatted out of the air. "We're losing the advantage, Lieutenant," Miller reported, her voice strained. "Too many of them. We need to exfil now, or we're going to be overrun." Akiko, despite her losses, a dozen warriors now lay dead or gravely wounded, felt a grim satisfaction. They were driving the demons back. Her axe was heavy with sweat, her lungs burning, but her resolve was unbroken.
They had pushed the unseen enemy into the thickest part of the jungle, where their strange, glowing eyes and silent sticks would be useless. She raised her axe. Closer. Drive them into the swamp.
But as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the canopy, painting the jungle in hues of gray and soft green, the true disparity became undeniable. The Rangers, operating under NVGs for hours, were still sharp, focused. The Amazons, relying on natural light, suddenly found their stealth compromised. Ramirez made the call. We're out. Miller, pop an IR strobe for extraction. Rodriguez, cover our retreat. Engage to suppress, not to kill. We need a clean break. A single, well-aimed shot from Rodriguez's M4 dropped a charging Amazon leader directly in front of Akiko. The sudden, silent kill broke the momentum. The Rangers disappeared into the rapidly brightening dawn, leaving behind a baffled, grieving Akiko and her diminished force. The jungle would reclaim the dead. The invisible demons had retreated, leaving a mystery and a grim lesson.
Did a modern Ranger fire team change history here? In the immediate sense, yes. A small, elite group of modern women warriors using technology and tactics centuries ahead of their time inflicted significant casualties on a legendary force without suffering any losses themselves, then withdrew. They would report back with invaluable intel, fundamentally altering any future engagement plans. But the larger sweep of history, the cultural and political landscape of Dahomey in the 19th century, would likely remain untouched. Akiko would remember the unseen demons, but her kingdom would still face the encroaching European powers, armed with increasingly sophisticated firearms, not just silenced M4s. The spirit of the Amazons, their ferocity and dedication, would persist. Now imagine an alternate outcome. What if the Rangers were ordered to hold the village? If Ramirez had been given a defensive objective, their limited ammunition and small numbers would have quickly been overwhelmed by the sheer, suicidal waves of Amazon warriors. They might have taken dozens, but eventually their positions would be breached and the close-quarters melee would negate their ranged advantage. History would record a tragic last stand. What if the Amazons had known about modern suppression? If, through some impossible foresight, Akiko had understood the concept of cover and concealment against modern firearms, her warriors might have engaged differently, flanking and harassing without direct charges, slowly wearing down the Rangers' will and ammunition. The outcome would still favor the Rangers due to tech, but at a much higher cost to them.
This hypothetical clash highlights a stark truth. Technology, when coupled with superior training and doctrine, can create an almost insurmountable asymmetry, even against the most fearsome and disciplined warriors. The Dahomey Amazons, in their time, were revolutionary, breaking gender norms and inspiring terror with their sheer ferocity. Their commitment to shock tactics and close-quarters combat was legendary. But the modern Ranger operates in a different dimension. Stealth, precision, night vision, and rapid-fire suppressed weapons create a battlefield where the enemy rarely sees them coming. This isn't just about men versus women, or old versus new. It's about the evolution of warfare itself. The Amazons leveraged a psychosocial edge by being all-female warriors in a patriarchal world. The Rangers achieve a similar psychological shock, not just by being women in a traditionally male-dominated elite force, but by their almost supernatural lethality. Their gender, ironically, provides another layer of disorientation to male enemies, just as the Amazons' gender did a century ago. Ultimately, the jungle, the numbers, the courage, and the discipline of the Amazons would be no match for the ghost-like efficiency of a modern special operations team. The past, however fierce, bows to the future's tools.
Change one rule. What would you tweak in this scenario to give the Amazons a fighting chance? Let us know in the comments below.